Hello, it's Big Cheds. This is the Trading Encyclopedia Daily Education series on my YouTube at Cheds Trading. Find me on Twitter at Big Cheds and Bitcoin Live, where I am a founding analyst. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about a symmetrical triangle. Here's what it looks like. Here's a bunch of images. And here's just a brief AI overview. Of course, you can pause and read this on your own. So symmetrical triangle essentially is when you have two converging lines. It's one of three types of triangles, right? You have an ascending triangle and you have a descending triangle, and then you have the symmetrical. This is a bullish continuation triangle. This is a bearish continuation triangle. And symmetrical triangle, it's also a continuation triangle. Most of the time, or the majority of the time, trends tend to continue, and symmetrical triangle usually leads to continuation. Here's another image as well, showing a bullish move into it and it continuing, and here showing a bearish move into it and continuing as well. Now, this can be called many things. It can also be called a coil. A lot of people call this a coil, where you have a move here, and you can even have the tightening range expressed inside of it, that equilibrium we talk about, where you have the high, now you have a low, you have a lower high and a higher low, and that forms a symmetrical triangle. And of course, you can use, a break of the lower high or the higher low. That's how you play an equilibrium. That's also a pretty good way to play the symmetrical triangle. Now, in theory, you can play the symmetrical triangle simply by when the price starts to break one of these trend lines, up or down, and with volume. But for me, ideally, the break should correspond with some level like a lower high break, or even an invalidation on a lower high break, on a higher low break, pardon me. Now, there's a couple other things as well. Now, the triangle really should break out. It should complete before it gets to the end. Like in theory, it should finish by about 2/3 of the way. When you start to get this close to the end of a triangle, you do something like this and this, and you start to go here. If you're down here, you're going to get false breakouts. Because the range is so tight, you get a lot of false breakouts right at the end. So it's really it's the most useful kind of in the first middle or first 2/3 really of the pattern. Okay, a term you can keep in mind is also the apex. If you have a triangle like this, the apex is here, right at the end of the triangle, or also called the cradle is another word for it, right at the end of the triangle. And really, you want to see it break out before it gets to that point. Now, you see things that are similar, like, for example, a bull pennant can look similar because you have converging lines, but it's not exactly symmetrical triangle, right? And the name isn't necessarily that important. It's just consolidation after an advance, right? Let's show you an example of here on the price of Bitcoin on the 4-hour. We see a pretty nice little symmetrical triangle that formed here. This is back in July of 2025. We have the move up. We have the lower line, we have the upper line, we have the symmetrical triangle, and it eventually led to bullish continuation. Not always neat and clean, right? You get close to the end of the triangle, and then you kind of faked out down, but really you held the higher low. And then you got the lower high break, and that was your trigger anyway, just based on simple horizontal technique, the way I like to play it, of course. But a symmetrical triangle is one type of triangle. We have ascending and descending, but symmetrical triangles lead to continuation. It's a tightening range with two converging trend lines with the equal angle. And this is for the Trading Encyclopedia Daily Education series on my YouTube at Cheds Trading. You can find me on Twitter at Big Cheds and Bitcoin Live, where I'm a founding analyst. Folks, thanks a lot. I hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you soon. Big Cheds out.